Good afternoon, knife nerds. Today I am taking a look at a couple of budget knives. I don't really buy budget knives, and it's not because I don't have respect for them. It's just that my funds are limited. I only have a certain amount of income that I allocate for knife purchases. And when I go to buy a knife, I buy knives that I want for my collection, things that are impressive to me and that I'm going to, probably hang on to and, be really proud of owning it. And, some of them get used, some of them are purely collector pieces. But I don't really spend money on budget knives because I've always kind of felt like, if I buy something that is on the lower spectrum of the cost scale, I'm really not going to appreciate it very much. And that money would be better served being spent on something that I'm going to like a lot, love, and, keep. So I just don't really buy any budget knives. So the only way that they'll ever get reviewed on my channel is if somebody sends them in for review. A buddy of mine or whoever, sends me something in for review because they want me to check it out. And that's what we have today. I have a really popular budget knife called the Honey Badger. These have really kind of taken the budget knife world by storm in the past couple of years. And these knives were sent to me. I've got two knives. I'm going to start with the Honey Badger. These knives were sent to me by a really good friend by the name of Bill Nottingham, who is the proprietor of the Rule Number 9 store. You can see there, www, the Rule 9 store. And I have known Bill for a few years. We met in the Facebook group Budget EDC, which is my main EDC group that I usually hang out in most of the time. And I met Bill there. He soon became an admin of the group as well. And then he started his own group, EDC Crazy. And EDC Crazy became a sister group to Budget EDC. And it's all history from there. Bill is a really, really cool guy, and he's gained a lot of respect in the community circles that we all run in. And I really, really appreciate Bill sending along these knives for me to check out and show you guys. So let's start with the Honey Badger that comes in a box, generic white box, and then a zippered pouch, which is a pretty nice pouch, pretty substantial, solid nylon zipper pouch. And he threw in a cool Honey Badger challenge coin there with the EDC Crazy Facebook group branding on the back side, which is awesome. So he has worked a lot with the Honey Badger company, and they do a lot of promotion together. So we're going to set that aside and get the knife out here. Now this knife, I think they run like between $27 and $35 or something. So kind of in that, Ontario rat price range. And kind of a similar, build quality to like an Ontario rat, except these have like an FRN, like a nylon plastic scales with this hexagonal pattern. It is a liner lock with a back spacer there, same FRN back spacer. It does have a pretty decent deep carry spring clip on there with the little Honey Badger logo on it. And it's kind of a flat ground blade, but it seems like it almost seems to me like they sort of convex the grind a little bit and drop it down to a thinner edge there. It is D2 steel. I believe the blade length is 3.5 inches. And it is a flipper on bearings. And one of the reasons that these are so popular is because they supposedly have really good action for, you know, the price range that they're in, and I'm inclined to agree with that. When I hit this flipper tab, it's deploying 100% reliably. I can't fail it. So the D10 is dialed in pretty decently, but I've got really bad lock stick here, so that's definitely a big con for me. I hate lock stick. And you know, when you get into a knife of this price range, you're going to expect to have some little flaws and stuff. These are made in China, I do believe, and so, you know, there's going to be some things that come along with that. The lockup is really super deep with this little thin liner lock. When you flip it open, that lock digs in there really deep, and it's just hung up. So it's a very sticky lock. Even I kind of wiped the oil off of it because there's oil everywhere, but I don't know, maybe that would go away if I took it apart and cleaned all the oil out of the lock faces. That might go away. I don't know. This is, you know, I don't really do knives with this price range, so it's not something that, you know, I would really think about knowing. Anyways, we do have this. It's a pretty cool looking stonewash. I mean, it's really, really, really super stonewashed and sort of semi-polished at the same time. So it's a pretty good looking, you know, working knife finish. There is this cutout hole that works as a finger deployment hole. I'm not sure if I can do this. Yeah, you can thumb flick it, but maybe not at this weird angle I'm at. So yeah, thumb hole, you can slow roll it too. Thumb hole and finger flick hole there, and so that all works pretty good. The deployment is nice, and it's, you know, as smooth as I would expect a knife that costs 30 bucks to be. And I have not taken it apart or cleaned it. I'm sure it would get a little bit better if I did do that. So you know, if you're looking for a budget knife, something that you're going to just beat on, you know, maybe you're using it for a specific work task, you got to break down boxes all day, this is, it's fairly thin behind the edge. It would be a good slicer. I have not sharpened this or anything. It's a loaner, so I'm going to send it back to Bill, and you know, in the condition that he sent it to me in. But if this, you know, if I put a good edge on this knife, I feel like it would cut very well as a, you know, cutting tool. And so for, you know, that price, 30 bucks or whatever they cost, $35, I don't know, 100%. I didn't really look into the, you know, all of that. I think it's a good deal. Is it better than an Ontario Rat 2? Probably not. No, I think the Rat 2s are a little better built, a little, you know, a little more consistent, but the action on this absolutely is going to crush, you know, that Rat 2 because it's a flipper and it's got the secondary deployment methods, etc., etc. You know, I could see why people have kind of gravitated towards these in the budget knife community, and it's pretty cool. That's really all about all I have to say about the Honey Badger. I wish it didn't have really terrible lock stick, but it is what it is. It's a budget knife, so, you know, you can't expect the world of it. Now the second thing that I've got here is a little more special, because this is actually designed by Bill Nottingham. This is the Tucson TS255, I believe is the model number. Don't quote me on that 100%. If I got it wrong, I'll correct it down in the description. But this knife is designed by my buddy Bill Nottingham, the proprietor of the Rule 9 Number 9 store and the EDC Crazy Facebook group. And For those of you that know Bill, no introduction is needed. But if you don't know Bill, you'll want to know some of the backstory. Bill was in the Army, and he served our country with valor. And when he got back from his deployment, his final deployment, he wanted to design a knife. He got into the EDC community, and he wanted to design a knife that was based around some of his combat experience. And so what you have here is the culmination of that effort. And it's a very, very interesting design that he came up with. Sorry, I got Facebook running in the background here. Because it's a little bit unusual. You have this sort of drop down scalloped thumb ramp. And when you first look at it, it might seem like an odd choice. But I talked to Bill about it, and some of his reasoning was for grip, to be able to hold on to this knife in a situation where things are getting rough and you need to hang on to that knife for dear life. And it absolutely works as intended. Your thumb digs into this thumb ramp, which is a drop down with a little bit of jimping inside there, and then you have this finger choil here where your two front fingers kind of lock in. And when I get a hold of this knife, it's really, really locked in. Like, there's no way anybody could try and take this from me. This thing is not going anywhere. And the ergos are surprisingly comfortable. Not a lot of hot spots on it. I might feel a little bit of, something back here along this little corner. I might feel a little something, but it's not bad. So, I feel like the ergos on this are pretty awesome for their intended purpose of, sort of a EDC / self-defense type knife. And, that's what Bill was going for here, and it works in that fashion excellently. So pretty cool there. This is the first two-son knife that I've really spent much time with. I've handled one or two others along the way, just briefly, but I have flipped and played with this one quite a bit. And so one thing I will say, the finish is so polished that I almost can't even capture it on camera because it's reflecting my lights here. It's a belt satin, but it's a very highly polished belt satin, and you can see Bill Nottingham's logo there, the Bill Notty logo. It is 14C28 in here, which is a Sandvik steel, which is a pretty decent budget steel, and takes a good edge, and it's got reasonable durability. Other side, it's pretty much sterile. There is no logo there, but you have this pretty interesting, belt satin finish that is nearly polished like a mirror. So you can see some reflectivity there. And the grind lines sort of go at a horizontal angle. They're not straight up and down, which makes it a little more of an interesting. And they're slightly curved. That's pretty unusual too. The belt lines are kind of curved at a slight arc instead of just being straight lines. So a little bit of an interesting finish going on there. Spine of the knife, everything is chamfered really well. It's not sharp 90s on the spine of the knife. And you've got this interesting harpoon tip, which would also kind of lend itself to that defensive aspect of it. And a very sharp spear point style blade, and it is reasonably thin behind the edge, and it came out of the box reasonably sharp. It's paper cutting sharp for sure. I did disassemble this knife and clean it because I wanted to give it the full once over and see how the action actually is. When you get a knife from Tucson, they're slathered up in this oil because I don't know if they're paranoid about the salt water in the shipping containers. You know, the salt in the air when these come on the boat from China, rusting out their knives. So they slather them up in oil, and you know, the pivot and everything gets kind of dirty and attracts a bunch of dirt and dust and manufacturing junk. So when you get them out of the box, they're kind of dirty and they're kind of rough, and you definitely want to take a TS255 apart, clean it, oil it, to get the full effect of how the action is actually going to be. And that's what I did here. And this is really smooth, like surprisingly smooth. The flipper tab, at first it's kind of like, well, it's a big, tall, straight, honking flipper tab with a little bit of jimping on it, but it's actually recessed quite a bit because it's down into that little scalloped thumb ramp area, and it's barely above the top of the area of the knife. So it's a big flipper tab, but it's a low profile flipper tab, which is interesting. And when you grab a hold of it, it's 100% reliable. There's no problems there. The detent is dialed in pretty well. It flips very nicely. Even has a little bit of recoil feel to it because it's actually flying out of that, you know, out of its cubby hole there with some authority. So good actions, very smooth, and you know, not quite drop shutty, but very close. I can kind of just shake it down a little bit and boom, it's, you know, down into its cubby hole there. Now, as far as the aesthetics, there is this pretty interesting, you know, straight line milling pattern on the titanium. This carbon fiber is inlaid in there. I'm going to try and roll in a picture I took when I had it disassembled, so you'll see that these carbon fiber inserts are not glued in. They're actually separate, and they're only held into the handles when the pivot and the clip is mounted. So those are removable. The pocket clip, yeah, I don't feel like this was a real big win. It works, it's functional, but it is extremely thin here, and so that could easily get snagged and probably bend that clip pretty badly, I would imagine. I'm just guessing, like I haven't carried this a lot, so you know, it's up pretty high there, so it'd be easy to snag on a door frame or a seat belt and bend that clip because it is kind of thin there. But it is functional and it works fine, no problems there. Now the carbon fiber has a very interesting texture to it. It's not sanded, it is bead blasted, and I can tell, you know, a bead blasted finish when you feel it because it feels almost sort of powdery. And in this case, on this knife, it is pretty cool because it adds grip. It adds a lot of grip to the handle, and you know, that's what Bill was going for. He wanted that, you know, really good purchase on the knife, to be able to hang on to that in a combat situation, because he was, you know, frontline combat military guy, and you know, there were situations where, you know, he had to use a knife in combat, and it was hard to hang on to, is what he said. I won't get too graphic about that, but suffice to say, this carbon fiber with the bead blasted finish adds grip to this handle, and it works beautifully. Now, you know, blade centering was pretty good, maybe not 100% on, but I'd say 98%. And you know, functionally, everything is good. I did Loctite the pivot to make sure that, you know, that was going to hold into place. And yeah, man, this is pretty cool. You know, my first real TS255. I dig it, and even better yet, it was designed by a really good friend. So, you know, if you guys want to support Bill in his efforts, you know, go by the Rule Number 9 store there and check out what he has up for grabs. And of course, you know, check out the EDC Crazy group, which is really just a fantastic community full of, you know, really great people. You know, when you get on Facebook and you get into these EDC groups, a lot of them are filled with trolls and little kids acting stupid or whatever, and you know, just a lot of dumb stuff going on. You won't find that at EDC Crazy at all. The community is very well administrated and taken care of, and most people there are friendly, inviting and fun to be around. So you know, a really cool EDC community to check out, and of course, you know, where Bill hangs out 99% of the time. Don't mind these finger smudges. It actually is a pretty attractive finish on that blade. Now, again, this is a relatively budget knife. I think they run around $100-ish, depending, you know, up to 150 on eBay when they're available in the standard Tucson auction style. I don't know if Bill has them in the store. He might. He did tell me that he was getting another batch at some point. And but yeah, you can check his store, or you can also find them on eBay sometimes. And you know, between $100 and $150 I think is what they typically go for. In this price range, it's not something that I typically purchase, and Bill did gift this knife to me, and I am, you know, hugely blown away by that gesture from him. And I will keep this knife. It will be used, it will be loved, and I am extremely thankful to Bill for, you know, hooking it up with this thing. It's super cool, man. Thanks, Bill. Other than that, I guess that's about it. It's a pretty cool knife, and yeah, I'll use it, man. Thanks a lot, Bill. All right, the rest of you guys, have a good rest of your day, and look forward to some more reviews coming in the future.